So good afternoon, distinguished thought leaders. Warm greetings from the Center for Higher Purpose in Business and hearty welcome to the second edition of Purpose Roundtable. Last month on the 4th of December, we had the very first edition of Purpose Roundtable, exploring why doing good is good business. I'm quite glad that the first roundtable got an encouraging response from the business fraternity. Thank you all for your constructive feedback. On behalf of Organic BPS and the Center, let me extend a warm welcome to the most distinguished thought leaders who are here with us today for the second edition of the Purpose Roundtable. We will be having the conversation on the theme, Higher Purpose of Business, Transcending CSR. Recently, I happened to read an interesting comment by former Executive Director of Tata Sons, Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan. Let me quote, "This gentleman speaks and writes only when he has something distinctive to say." I'm delighted to welcome that gentleman, Mr. Arun Mehra, to this roundtable.
Thank you, Dilip. Thank you.
Mr. Arun Mehra is a thought leader on institutional transformation in the private, public, and social sectors. He has authored many best-selling books, and his latest titles, Transforming Systems, Why the World Needs a New Ethical Toolkit, and The Learning Factory, How the Leaders of Tata Became Nation Builders, are indeed very thought-provoking. His seminal work, Transforming Capitalism, Business Leadership to Make the World Better for Everyone, is in very much sync with today's topic for discussion. Mr. Maira currently is a chairman of HelpAge International and former member of India's Planning Commission. He was with Tata Group for 25 years at top level positions and was also the Boston Consulting Group's chairman. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Dilip. It's a joy and a pleasure to be here in discussions with you. And I can see other people and you'll introduce them. Thank you.
It is very rare to see top corporate leaders, that too from multinational companies, personify humility and compassion. We are lucky to have one such person whom Business Today has recently called the growth architect, Sri Suresh Narayanan, Chairman and Managing Director, Nestle India. A career that has spanned over 30 years in FMCG, which began with Hindustan Unilever, followed by Nestle, where he spearheaded significant structural and strategic changes in sales and customer management. Mr. Suresh Narayanan took over as Chairman and Managing Director of Nestle India when Nestle was going through an existential crisis related to the popular brand Maggi noodles. Not only was he able to turn around the business, restore self-confidence, but he could also evolve an upward growth trajectory that placed Nestle as a market leader in 7 out of 8 categories it operated in. An alumnus of the prestigious Delhi School of Economics, he holds various certifications from the IMD Business School, Switzerland, and the London Business School. Suresh sir, I welcome you to the Purpose Roundtable.
Thank you, Dilip. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Center and Organic BPS, I offer my warm greetings to all those who are watching this event from across the world. Let me now welcome and introduce today's discussion leader, our beloved mentor and Governing Council member, author, thought leader, Mr. V.K. Madhav Mohan. Madhav sir, over to you.
Thank you, Dilip. It's a great privilege, compounded with a lot of pleasure, to engage with such powerful minds and practitioners as Arun and Suresh. The theme for today, of course, is Higher Purpose of Business, Transcending CSR. It's a philosophical question And I'm sure the insights of our two very distinguished thought leaders will leave us all far more enlightened at the end of this discussion. The four broad areas that we will delve into are, firstly, what is the responsibility of business? We will refer to, of course, Milton Friedman's very thought-provoking and today controversial paper on the subject, which we'll come to in a minute. The second area we will focus on is to ask this question: is it correct to equate CSR with purpose? The third area is a question that all of us are confronted with virtually daily. Have CSR programs become mere PR exercises? And finally, we will explore the necessity to be authentic. So being authentic and being good, is that a choice? And shouldn't it be the key factor in any purpose communication? Indeed, the DNA of leadership. So these are the four areas that we'd like to cover. And with that, perhaps we'll carry on with a very free-floating discussion. My distinguished panel, please feel free to jump in at any time. We'll make it very informal so that the thoughts can ebb and flow as and when they arise in your own very formidable intellects. The question that we are grappling with is about the purpose of business. And this is relevant today because we are in the 50th anniversary of Milton Friedman's very, very powerful, short but powerful paper, which he published on the 13th of September, 1970 in the New York Times, about the purpose of business. Milton Friedman said that the purpose of business is to make more profit. Now, how relevant is that today? And have the flow of time, space, and technology, and indeed the evolution of mankind, rendered Milton Friedman's supposition about maximizing profit obsolete, or is it relevant? What would you say, Arun? What are your thoughts on Milton Friedman?
What is the purpose of business is the key question that you are discussing today. I want to broaden it to the perennial question that human beings have, and that they are encouraged to think about by sages in all religions and all spiritual traditions, which is, what is the purpose of your life? Why were you born? What good is going to happen to the universe by your being around? And so this question about the purpose can't be answered without considering the life around you, the universe around you. How do you fit into that? And that would define what your purpose is. We are going through right now, in the last few years, and accelerated by the COVID pandemic, an intellectual crisis, an ideological crisis, a scientific crisis. It is like, as someone might say, like the Copernican crisis, where so many years ago in the world of the physical sciences and astronomy, Copernicus turned through insights and calm reflection on what is actually happening around the theory on its head that the Earth was the center of the universe. He pointed out, in fact, that the Earth was an insignificant little planet going around something much bigger, and there were bigger planets actually in our universe than we are. He dared not even publish this because he would have been executed, excommunicated, and executed. Because there was this strong belief that we are, and human beings are, produced in God's image, and we are here to be in charge of the world. We are here to be in charge of the world. Hmm? Now, today, as we are realizing that we have, as human beings, so badly impacted the condition of our earth that we are concerned about our own survival for the next 40, 50 years, and the time limits differ depending on different scientific extrapolations, whether it's 50 years, 100 years. But we cannot continue, or even shorter, cannot continue living the way we are. We might even get extinguished as a species if we don't realize that it's the world around us that enabled us to come to life and that is going to continue sustaining us. So, the purpose of my existence and humans' existence has to be to nurture that which has nurtured us, to be in harmony with, to be a part of a larger system. Now, I come to Milton Friedman. Okay. Now, his thesis was that the purpose of business, and it's the word purpose again, is to make more profits for its investors. So, when we talk sometimes, Madhav, about we need more purpose-driven businesses, we have very purpose-driven businesses. In fact, it's the wrong purpose. So we got to change this idea that just giving business the desire to be purpose-driven is not going to change the condition of the world, which is what we should be concerned about at the moment. So the purpose of business must be connected with the sustenance of the society around it, as well as the environment, the physical environment within which all human beings and all society exists. So when you start from that premise, now this is an intellectual argument I've given you, and I guess that some could argue against it, but I'm not sure Milton Friedman would have taken the perspective that I'm taking, because he would then say that if one part looks after itself very well, and all parts look after themselves very well, going back to Adam Smith's, people say his theory about if everyone acts in their self-interest rationally, somehow by some invisible hand, everybody will be well off. Hmm? So this Friedman again was going into a view in which just look after yourself, be selfish. And selfishness is good, greed is good, and the world gets all right. Hmm? So I'm coming from that perspective, and we can go into then the difficulty that people in business like Suresh probably has, who's confronted with analysts and media persons who say, project for me what is going to be your profit in the next quarter. So they keep forcing our great leaders like Suresh to think of themselves as responsible only for the returns of investment in their business. The change is
It's
not going to
fascinating.
be.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating what you said. And I'm so thrilled that you actually brought in a spiritual dimension to the whole purpose argument, which we will get into in a little bit. But it's very interesting that Milton Friedman, who of course was the high priest of the private enterprise, free and society, capitalism kind of thing, and he equated capitalism with freedom, which in fact is the title of one of his books. Friedman makes some very interesting arguments. He says, as a corporate executive, you're an agent, not the principal. You're an agent of all the people who invested in the corporation. And therefore, when you make decisions about corporate social responsibility, you're actually acting as an agent, and you have no business to do that. And when you actually do things like corporate social responsibility, you're imposing a tax, whereas you have no business to be imposing a tax. The tax is the exclusive prerogative of government, and so on. But you know, Professor Oliver Hart, who won the Nobel for economics in 2016, had a very interesting take on Milton Friedman's argument. He says, let's not talk about maximizing stakeholder value. How about maximizing stakeholder welfare? Would that kind of take the edge off the Friedman argument, and would that make people like uh,
Absolutely. Abs-
corporate executives more comfortable? You could go first, and then Suresh can share his insights on it.
Oh, Suresh can go first, but
Yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead.
you use the word agent.
Yeah,
Corporate management and economics, it's about agent. An agent of whom? And that is where the question comes. You're an agent of investors, it's
yes,
thesis and management, business management philosophy, or am I an agent of nature? That's the more spiritual and systems idea. And yes, so we use these same terms, but we narrow them. And therefore, again, when you talk about wealth, if you're going to talk only about money wealth, which is a good thing from the management perspective because it's easier to measure. And it was Milton Friedman who famously said, Albert or Hirschman, since we're talking about economics, that he has a problem with people, citizens speaking in political voices because he said political voices are fuzzy. You can't quantify what they're saying or clarify even what they have said. Why don't people speak in money? Because money is very precise. He would much rather they put their money where their mouth is. But what if people don't have any money like the poor people have? How will they be heard? How will they be heard? So this has become the point that if you have money, then you can call the shots. And so in capitalism, good governance is defined by that the voting rights are distributed according to how much money is invested by people. If you put in 100 rupees into a venture and someone put 1,000, then that person has 1,000 more votes than you have. But supposing people have no money to put into the venture of life, they have no votes. And this used to be the thesis. But we have, as society, begun to realize that money is not the most important thing. And you talked about it, welfare and well-being. So even in GDP, let's measure the increase in well-being and not the GDP, which is a monetary measure of what's going on in a country.
yes, yes. As somebody who deals with these things on a mega scale every day, Suresh, how do you relate to Friedman's argument and how it's got kind of broadened or maybe even diluted? Does it mean different things today?
Thank you, Madhav, and thank you for that question. And I must admit that following upon the erudition that Arun brings to the case is a little bit like me showing the candle to the sun. But I shall nevertheless attempt to take this question. You see, to me, I think I completely agree with the premise that Arun is placing so eloquently on the expanded nature of the word purpose. To me, I look at Milton Friedman's hypothesis more as a context of the times, rather than a continuum for the future. And let me just expand. I mean, if I were to look at, let's say, the spheres of influence of an individual and a corporate, you have basically, in my conceptualization, 6 spheres of influence. Number 1 is the individual. Number 2 is the corporation. Number 3 is the immediate environment of the corporation. Then is the country. Then is the planet, right? Or is the planet Earth. And then, of course, is the larger cause that Arun so nicely put as the reason to be. Now, I believe that Milton Friedman's kind of direction was more pertaining to a point in time in order to anchor the role of the business leader or the role of a business manager. And if a leader or a business manager in a particular context has to focus on the 1 or 2 big things that is going to guide his or her direction, certainly the maximization or optimization of profits or shareholders' wealth or value would be one of the key roles that he plays. Even if we do not consider the use of the word agent, which I believe is a very harsh word, it almost makes it a kind of a master-servant relationship. That the master is the shareholder who's put in the money, and the servant is the person who's executing it. Even if we don't take that as the kind of the defining argument of the case, still in Friedman's conceptualization, this was really to kind of anchor the role that a business manager plays or a business leader plays. Now, we have to see in the last 50 years, as you rightly said, Madhav, society has moved, countries have moved, and societal changes have been dramatic. We talked about geopolitical shifts. We have talked about globalization. We have talked about countries which are developing. We have talked about fissures that have appeared, fissures of inequality, fissures of climate change, fissures of greed, fissures of sustainability, fissures in terms of the differences in human beings being dictated by birth rather than dictated by virtue of their merit or hard work on the planet, fissures of religion. There are so many fissures that have appeared, some of whom which have become almost earthquake-like, or pardon my use of the word pandemic-like in terms of existence over a period of time, that I think society itself, our people and thinkers and politicians and individuals have somehow now come to a situation where there is a conflict between trying to do the best for your company and also assuaging the conscience of being a good human being, a good citizen, a good person to do good for society. And I think this is really coming to a head, because if you look at the rhetoric around us, and if you look at, as Arun also talked about, aspects of greed, aspects of grabbing whatever opportunities you get, aspects of trying to maximize whatever you are able to lay your hands on, and maximize whatever can be got by wealth, which is really the metrics that Arun also mentioned on money being the single denominator of calling the shots on the planet. I think this has come to pass now. So today we reach a situation where clearly any corporation, any entity, even big or small, if they say that, look, my job is only to maximize the profit, the people be damned. I mean, look at this pandemic. This pandemic has brought forth the single most important feature, that leadership, purpose, values, compassion, and empathy are going to drive the businesses forward rather than a single-minded focus on profits. I think where there's so much of despair, so much of disenfranchisement, what you have seen in the last couple of days happening even in a democracy like the United States are manifestations of a much larger problem that mankind is facing. And here we are really talking about individuals acting as entities to determine a multi-dimensional achievement of whatever task they are given, rather than a unidimensional achievement of just profits or just shareholder value or just any other metrics that they can use. So today it is really, we have reached a point where things have come to a head. And if we do not go back to those very simple things on what is purpose, and purpose, as Arun rightly said, yes, is a reason to be or an intention to do. And yes, there was a purpose even 50 years ago, which was profit maximization. Today, unfortunately, that profit maximization has led to a lot of other collateral damages that individuals, thinkers, politicians, society, and corporates have to seriously introspect on. And post-pandemic, where the economic collapse and the societal collapse is staring us in the face, I think anyone who stands up and he says that, look, I don't really care a damn, I'm still going to be maximizing the profits from my organization or doing all the stuff in a very unidimensional way, society, country, planet be damned, I think is in peril. And that's really the simple kind of exposition that I would put of this case.
Oh, that's so brilliantly articulated. There are so many fabulous themes that you've interwoven, in the way you explained your concept of how business should be much, much more deeper and significant and substantial. But one formulation stands out to me. You said the days of maximization are probably over. And I think what you were probably leading or pointing to is to replace optimization, maximization with optimization.
Yes.
And the minute we talk optimization, the whole lot of other variables get into the equation. Most notably, I think spirituality too. And so let's squeeze Arun a little more on his, focus on spirituality and doing good, and how does that all fit with this purpose theme, actually.
Thank you. And Suresh has, I'm not surprised that I agree with Suresh and that he pushes me in my thinking to clarify myself. Uh, you have introduced, Madhav, that we must start with thinking about purpose. And I've been saying so, and so is Suresh too, that what is your purpose? Your purpose. And we must broaden the concept of purpose, is what we're agreeing with. Now, we're talking about equipping managers, equipping corporate leaders and managers to enable the world to be better, not just for their shareholders, but for everyone, for everyone. So they would need some tools to do that, because the tools that they presently are taught are how to focus on one thing, which is the profits and returns on the investments, and of course many things related to that. Grow your revenues, mind your costs, but that single-minded focus, it's the measure to do that. Now you're saying that, look, while doing that, while focusing on what you have to do, your role in the world, like Friedman said, please be mindful of the impact that you're having on the rest. Okay, now that may complicate things. So you mean I also have to start opening out my blinkers and start looking around? Then, I'll get distracted. I want to be focused, but we are recognizing that we have to learn how to keep many things in view at the same time. And we're talking about optimizing. I have to optimize with respect to many things. And it's the famous word about, balance in my objectives, and not performing only with respect to one of those many things that I should pay attention to. So we come to systems thinking, and I find that it's the missing discipline in scientists, it's the missing discipline in managers. And let me illustrate this by the COVID pandemic. This pandemic struck us and struck humanity, struck the economy. And so we needed something to fight against it, a solution for it. And since it was a medical issue to people's bodies being infected and dying, we turned to doctors and said, tell us what should be done. So the doctors at that time did not have a vaccine, which is a single shot problem. So with that single shot, take care of the single problem that you are facing. So they said, well, lockdown, very firm lockdown and social distancing. It was a medical solution to what is perceived to be a medical problem. And that lockdown, as imposed, so harsh, began to cause disruptions in other systems around us on which people depend for their well-being. Okay, initially in our country, surely, yes, people couldn't access food, so they had to get out, and then they were lucky they had income to access food. Some didn't have work and no income to buy the food. So people naturally, for the sake of living and being alive and well-being, were breaking out of the medical solution. Yes, but did the policymakers consider many angles together and saying what would be a good solution which optimizes, as you said, yes, the condition of people, while we must take care of this unexpected problem for sure. Now, as time has gone on with the pandemic and the various cures, we have been finding that, well, some things, if you do for the sake of protecting people today, like keep children out of school, now we're starting to worry that the children's futures are going to get affected. Their development is getting affected with respect to what they'll be like in the future, their well-being in the future. So systems thinking suggests, and it's a discipline which enables you to think outside the focus, to think of many things which together create the condition in which you find yourself, which you wish to change. So teaching systems thinking or enabling people or encouraging people to think of themselves as parts of systems and to think of systems is the discipline that is necessary. I mentioned science and I'm talking of medicine as a science. Now look, the medicine, the second cure was to get a vaccine. So why is it taking so long to get the vaccine? Because we are testing for side effects. The same doctors, they say that you must test for side effects because you could give this vaccine to people who have different conditions. And so the same one solution can cause more harm than good. So again, think of the whole system before you apply this a few drops into people's bloods everywhere, the same standard solution. So systems thinking is missing. And this again, the whole thing of focus. And going back again to Friedman's thesis, and recently I heard Raghuram Rajan surprisingly defend on the 50th anniversary Milton's thesis, because he said if business people were to start worrying about all these other things, they will make a mess because they don't know how to manage complexity. And I come to, therefore, systems thinking enables you to understand complex systems and then to figure out the thing that you are the agent to do, but do in a way that you don't cause harm to other parts of the system. And so finally, when you hear Dr. Guleria saying that, India has handled it well or badly, what has happened in the medical side, he said many people have been dying these last few months in AIIMS and elsewhere who were being treated in AIIMS because we said we are reserved for COVID. So we are so focused on preventing COVID, killing people, that people are dying for many other things for we already had solutions and hospitals set up to do that. So unfocus, think of systems. And the third one is if you want to understand the system and what's happening in other parts of the system, you've got to listen to other perspectives. You've got to listen to other experts and other perspectives. So there are three disciplines, I say, that managers need to have and business schools need to teach. One is more ethical reasoning, which is, what is my purpose? Keep asking. Okay, if I take this decision, who will benefit from it? This is G.R.D. Tata's famous thing, think of India before you think of Tata's. Always test your decisions with respect to the impact it's going to have on other people, not just on your improvement of your own profits. The second, systems thinking. And the third, for systems thinking's sake, better listening to people not like yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I couldn't agree more with you about systems thinking. Because if you don't do systems thinking, you will sub-optimize. And when you sub-optimize, you will short-circuit the entire system. And we have seen that happening. And when that kind of sub-optimization happens, there is this great drive for homeostasis. And the system will start correcting itself in some way, shape, or form. Which then brings me to, and perhaps Suresh, you can take a crack at it. If you were to do systems thinking and look at this whole balanced approach to business, would you say having a very powerful CSR component in our operations is tantamount to having a higher purpose in business?
Look, I think
where does CSR stop and where does higher purpose guide the way?
Look, Madhav, I think we are confusing two things if we mix purpose and CSR. Purpose is simply reason for existence, reason to be.
Right.
And that has got manifestations in terms of the choice of what you will do, the choice of how you will do it, and the choice of the outcomes that your actions will lead to. So it's a simple, straightforward equation, which sometimes organizations tend to forget because we have now clouded our thinking with other statements like mission and vision and God knows what else, right? That we have forgotten, I think, as Arun rightly said, the reason to be. I think the Japanese call it ikigai, which is all about just the reason to be. What is it that makes you tick, makes you click, makes your heart beat faster, whatever. I mean, we define it. So I think for me the purpose centricity gets married with the cultural edifice that an organization builds up. And the cultural edifice of the organization, together with the purpose and together with the organizational whatever execution or strategic model that it has, comes with a certain outcome that we define either in terms of impact on society or impact on business or whatever we have. But in my belief, I think purpose and culture go together very, very closely. And if you look at examples of great Indian enterprises, I think Arun had the privilege of working with men like Mr. J.R.D. Tata. So I think these are unique men who don't come, unfortunately, too often on this planet, and certainly into our business firmament, who combined a strong sense of purpose of what the Tata name stood for, and a strong culture that would support not just what Tata would do, but what the nation would achieve. In that, they took a model where it's probably the only entity I can think of on the planet where a maximum amount of the profits of that organization goes towards Tata Trust and goes towards the activities to support the goodness that is being provided by Tatas and by the vision and purpose of Tatas. So CSR is fundamentally one small manifestation of what purpose can lead to. But if you have got a business that stinks from the inside, but you've got grandiose CSR plans of signing out checks and giving it to different causes, and assuaging your conscience, probably for all the ills that you are manifesting in the economy and in society, but trying to gloss it over by the goodness that you're doing. I honestly think the residual impact of this, even in the short term, if it is considered to be a great cause that you have pursued, but longer term, I think people will see through this and say the purpose and culture of this organization stinks, and yet it is trying to perfume itself by putting in this veneer of CSR and trying to cover it up. So I think to me, we have to keep it aside. Yeah. If you are an organization with a very strong purpose, with a very strong culture, with a very strong optimization system thinking mode that Arun talked about, and honestly, if you don't have a CSR plan, you probably will make as much impact on people and the planet as a company which has got a suboptimal purpose, suboptimal culture, and of course, an enormous amount of money being put behind CSR. That might actually land up muddling the waters a lot more than an organization focused on purpose and culture. So I really see these as two different entities that we shouldn't obfuscate, and we shouldn't start confusing and saying that I'm spending 3% of my profits or 5% of my profits on CSR, so I can then go and pollute the rivers a little bit more because it's fine. I'm giving a little bit more money than what I should be doing.
In fact, that's the whole point. If you don't have clarity of purpose and you do CSR, or if your purpose is not a higher purpose, that's when CSR degenerates into a PR exercise. In fact, Oliver Hart makes this in his paper, alludes to this very same issue that you mentioned. He says, here's a company which actually pollutes rivers and then gives massive contributions to the municipality in that area to clean the rivers.
I think that Amadha, for me, the days of photo opportunities, sponsored write-ups, and grandiose medals being offered for community work being done is long gone. It still exists, unfortunately. It is still very much a measure of our own egos and our own social standing, saying this is the kind of stuff that I'm doing. But I think those companies which have actually what I would say, like what we do in Nestle, creating shared value, which is never look at this as signing a check and dishing out money, but of really trying to work together with the community. I think great organizations have done this. When we work with 100,000 farmers in the Punjab for milk, it is creating shared value. They give us the milk, and we provide them a lot of other things in order to make that happen. And that ecosystem is really what we need for sustainable value creation to society and also to the community that we need to pursue. Because ultimately, a person who's doing something for you, if he keeps getting charity, he or she starts to feel pretty small about it. They don't feel that they have contributed anything, and you're just dishing out this money because of a so-called goodness of heart. But if you really involve them, it's like giving fish to somebody to eat and teaching him to fish, right?
Yeah.
Teaching
teaching
is far better. It's far better, and I think creating shared value programs, as indeed great organizations, including the Tatas, have done, is really part of that firmament. I think the longer we tarry on that philosophy, I think the better off we will be as a planet.
From what both of you have been saying, it seems to me that higher purpose is what will keep everybody focused on growing together, on evolving together, taking care of the planet. So if that is so, Arun, first I would like to get your thoughts and then come to Suresh. If you have higher purpose, does every company have the same higher purpose by definition? Or is there, when you say a higher purpose, is that kind of an absolute purpose? That is, do good, take care of things, be balanced, optimize the system.
Yes, I would say yes. The ultimate purpose of all beings is to, like we said, nurture yourself. But while nurturing yourself, keep nurturing the system around you. All, whether you are um, a tree or you are a lion or whether you are a human, that is the role of all living things in the larger system. They all look after themselves. Sure, I mean, tiger looks after himself. The tree sucks as much, it needs nutrition from the soil itself. But they're sort of designed to, at the same time, keep nourishing other things, even by the bad actions that we might think they are violent actions that the tiger takes. They're nourishing a whole system. They don't choose to be selfish. And we have created the business corporation as it was designed from the 17th century onwards. And of course, Milton Friedman gave it a sharp intellectual argument that to create an institution set up only for the purpose or primarily for the purpose of ensuring that the investors can get good returns. In fact, give this institution limited liability. It's a limited liability corporation. The investors are secured against the harm that they do beyond what they have put into it. It means only your capital can get destroyed, though you might have destroyed several times more in terms of the damage, and you might have killed people in the process, but you cannot be taken into account for that. That is outside, the limited liability corporation. This is very good for investors. It's very efficient for them because their capital keeps getting protected from collapse, and they can invest the capital somewhere else and grow that. So the money keeps growing. The money part of economies has grown. It grows, used to be counted in billions or millions, billions. Now we talk of trillions. I don't know what else. So that is all growing. But at the same time, as we're saying, the harm that is being caused to the environment, definitely, and even to the lives of people by the toxicity of products that are being provided to people. Now you can say that, look, what's wrong? If I'm giving people what they want, yeah, I'm providing a service. People say that they want to smoke many years ago. So if I give them cigarettes, aren't I doing good? I'm responding to a need. But when I begin to realize, and I don't, all of us are learning, I begin to realize that maybe my products are causing some harm. And I must be alert. Are they or are they not? And when I sense it, and I may be the first to sense it because I'm tracking what my products are doing, then I must stop it. And so you can see the dilemma that tobacco companies have had. And this comes to even pharmaceutical companies, the releasing drugs too early, etc., etc. Make sure, and business cases will tell you this. The dilemma is, should you just withdraw your medicine? Or should you just get out of the business of cigarettes, for example? That's not what it would say. It says, okay, the corporation's purpose has been defined in its charter. You, as an agent of the investors, must ensure that it fulfills that purpose. So I say that the ultimate purpose is what must be kept in mind. And we may have to keep defining, redefining the products that we produce, the ways we produce them, because we are learning to do things which are improving the well-being of people and nourishing the planet at the same time. It's a perpetual question. It must be for the leaders of corporations a perpetual question. And it, unfortunately, when they ask it, then the people will say, don't get confused. Yeah? Go to what your brand is about and maintain it and nourish that brand, which is very narrow. So we've got created in society citizens, which are corporations. And we talk about corporate citizens, the corporate citizenship. By design, by law, they're required to be selfish. How can you say that a world will be nourished by having more selfish people in it, and especially when those selfish people are larger than the poor people for whom they should be producing well-being? So this has become the problem. It's the Orwell situation of where there are some animals, the animal farm situation, some animals which are more equal than others. Corporations have become more equal citizens of society than ordinary citizens, Corporations have the right to sue others. Corporations have the right to property. Corporations have the right to free speech. But there's so much more money to put behind this than other citizens have. And so this is where today, and Suresh has alluded to this, there is a crisis of capitalism happening, and it's causing a crisis in democracy because there are unequal citizens in democracy now.
That's such an interesting formulation. A crisis in capitalism is leading to a crisis in democracy. Do you like to expand on that for a minute?
Yeah, it is this. You see, capitalism is founded on the principle of property rights. Yeah. That if it's your property, you have a right to decide what is to be done with it. And it seems sensible. What's wrong with it, right? And then, as you say, the person who has more property will have more votes. He owns more shares in the company and so on. Whereas democracy is founded on the principle that every beating heart, whether it belongs to a man or a woman or a black person or a white person or a Dalit or to a Brahmin or to a person who has zero money or to a person like who has, $1 billion, their votes in how the society is going to be governed is the same. And so there are two principles of governance which are clashing. And I used to experience this being in corporations, especially more lately as an independent director. As an independent director, I'm supposed to be a representative of the system. And if I say that, look, what you're doing is wrong, you better rethink even the product that you're producing and so on. I'm told that I'm on the board, I've got fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the corporation, with respect to its charter, produces the maximum returns for investors. So there's a conscience problem here also. And I'm saying, okay, because I've given the role of an independent director, I thought of it that way, I would think about it. But this is people running the corporations themselves must continuously face this question.
That's right.
And they don't. And therefore I'm saying by remaining selfish, they are corrupting democracy.
So, Suresh, do you see companies all sharing the same higher purpose? If higher purpose is like what Arun has just expanded, this great compassionate systems thinking oriented collaborationist kind of togetherness, taking care of everybody, will company A and company B have different purposes then?
I honestly believe, Madhav, that the more complex and the more appendages we add to the word purpose, we are going to make it further a philosophic concept and less something that is practicable. Because ultimately, while the purpose of our existence is a question that all of us ask at an individual level or should be asking at an individual level, for a corporation to take, I think it is fundamentally what is it meant to do and what is it meant to define in terms of outcomes that becomes its purpose. You call it higher purpose or lower purpose or whatever purpose, it is the reason to be. Now, this has evolved from an earlier situation where profit maximization was almost the sole purpose of entities, to a situation today where, as a consequence of all that we are seeing in the world, the schism that Arun talks about between capitalism and democracy is happening, and it is in front of our eyes, and it is all around us. At this stage, I think what is important for companies and for companies which are more far-sighted, which have got a longevity, and if you look at it, all companies in Fortune 150, 500 that have existed for more than 50 to 100 years have all had fairly robust purpose and cultures that have defined it. I mean, that's the only reason why they've been able to go through 2 world wars and go through different carnages across the world and still remain together as an entity. So I think it's very clear for me that the purpose and the culture defines an organization together. If the purpose itself is expanded to include some of the other impacts that you want to have on the planet, be it in terms of environment, or be it in terms of society, or be it in terms of other aspects that interest you as a company, I think to that extent, this concept becomes manageable. It also becomes communicable, because the important issue on purpose is that it should not be just emblazoned on the entrance of a corporation and then everybody else forgets about it, because then it's a nice statement to have on the annual report of the company. I think if purpose is truly lived in terms of culture and outcomes, some of the issues that Arun talked about of independent directors feeling that, am I here to subscribe to a cause, or am I here to look at the larger scheme of things? I think that confusion also will go, at least in the governance within that organization. So I think most organizations should try and practice this clean ethics, respect, dignity, maybe a certain what was called in the old days middle class values of what it is to exist and work in the world, seen together with a robust business model and producing products which over a period of time, as Arun rightly said, you have to calibrate and see, look, some of this, if it is not making sense over a period of time, how do you phase it out and come up with stuff that is more meaningful as far as people are concerned. I think if this is done over a period of time, at least in my own observation, you are able to get the right kind of people to work in the organization. If I look at the current generation, the millennials and the Generation Z, I mean, at Nestle, for example, 80% of my company are millennials. So the day I retire, the average age will fall by about 5. in terms of people with experience. Generation Z is now upon us. You know, these youngsters are coming in today as interns, trainees, and various other things. These youngsters are looking to an organization where they see a tangible outcome to society rather than just the profit and loss and the great numbers that you've shown. When we used to visit campuses before the pandemic to talk to students. You'll be surprised, Madhav, nobody is interested in any slide on the product portfolio, profits, investment, return on invested capital, this, that, and the other. They just are not interested. They say, sir, don't waste your time. We can go on your site, we can download it, we can see it, and we know exactly what you guys are doing. I want to know what is the soul of your corporation, which is what are you doing for society? How are you impacting more people? And what is the tangible commitment that you are going to be making as a business leader on behalf of your corporation for the future of India? That to me is more important than understanding the nuances of your business model. I think this is also putting therefore pressure, and also is making corporate leaders reflect that is what I am doing adequate to stay the course. If I have to attract the best and brightest people to work in my organization, if I have to ensure that they contribute their best and that I retain this talent over a period of decades, or at least, nowadays, when Arun and I were probably in the profession strongly, working 30 years, 25 years in a company was no big deal. Now, if they work for 5-10 years with you, you have to count yourself pretty lucky. So even if you take a 10-year span, is somebody willing to invest 10 years of their life in your corporation? And no surprises, purpose, culture, outcomes, and impact is what is making the cut with this generation. So forget any philosophic overtones of the word purpose. The dictum that Arun and I are subscribing to is not that we all become philosophers and saints, and that we all give up everything else in life and become completely and totally at peace with nothing happening in the organization. Forget all of that. Good purpose, good culture, good outcomes is good for business. I think that is the reality today. And the faster we realize it and don't put any appendages of philosophy to it, I think the better off we will be as individuals and as companies.
Which then leaves you no choice but to be authentic about everything you're doing, and authentic to your purpose. And there is a dropping of pretense, and you're accountable to your internal stakeholders, because you said one thing, you have to do what you said. So is authenticity going to be really one of the most important key requirements of leadership and companies as we go forward, Suresh?
Well, I think, for me, authentic and authenticity first begins with the human being himself. Forget any appendages that you add to it of being a leader or a manager or whatever. Well, all that comes later. Authenticity is that capability of being who you are and transmit yourself the way you are in all the flesh and glory that you have got to people, right? I'm a great fan of the poet Kabir, and I believe that 700 years ago, he has said things that it's so relevant to us, to our times today. I wish we read more of people like Kabir. And he had a beautiful doha. He said, "Jab main tha, tab hari nahi, ab hari hai, main nahi." So when I was there, ego was there was no God. Ab hari hai, main nahi. So now God is there and the ego is gone. Sab andhyara mit gaya, jab deepak dekhe mahi. All the darkness in my life went the day I saw the lamp within myself. And I think that is the lamp of authenticity. If you are authentic, we've been having this conversation now for more than an hour. If we have been inauthentic in whatever we have tried to reflect, Arun, me, or you, Madhav, it would have been caught out in 2 minutes flat.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right? You don't need, I mean, and these days sometimes, and corporate leaders are stuck with this ego in the belief that because I have worked 35, 40 years in the trenches, I can fool a 25-year-old with glib talk and with glitzy jargon and impress him on what a clever leader I am. I think nothing can be farther from the truth. So therefore, I think the day we see our own Deepak is the Deepak of authenticity. And authentic leadership is as important as clean air in organizations. If you have inauthentic, if you have got deceptive, if you have got political leadership in organizations that unfortunately pollute the atmosphere within the company, I don't think you can have the performance shining through as a company, as an entity over a period of time. And therefore, I think it's important that I think something that what Larry Bossidy, I believe, once said. He said, you'll never be remembered for the profits you made or for the turnovers you delivered. You'll be remembered for how you made the other man feel. That's all our legacy of leadership is. We are not going to be leaving great edifices that are going to outlast us in terms of enormous buildings and factories and various other things. But what people will remember you is by how you made them feel. I interacted with this person 10 years ago. How do I feel happy about it? I interacted with you, Madhav. I interacted with you, Arun. How do I feel about these people? And I think ultimately authenticity is all about that. If you are blind to that, I'm afraid, only God can help you.
That's right. Brilliant. I mean, I wish more CEOs and chairmen would speak this language because it's been in my experience, a lot of the time the ego comes into the room 2 hours before the boss comes in. I wish a lot more people would take what you're saying to heart and model themselves on this path. And Arun said something at the beginning of our discussion, which really I thought needs a little expansion. We don't have much time, but Arun, you, in everything you said, alluded to, and in fact, there was such a wonderful fragrance of spirituality in everything that you said. How do you see integrating spirituality with this hardcore operational alignment and authenticity that Suresh was talking about briefly?
Yeah, exactly. That has been my question. And Suresh also said, teeing off this question, that, just being a good person is not enough. We have to, in action, produce goodness. That means we got to be better managers, different sorts of managers than presently we have as managers in government and in business. So it's like Gandhiji, I mean, he was a saint, but he was in action all the time. He didn't retreat to some Himalayas or some ashram and then he kept himself pure, that I won't engage with the world because that's messy. If I engage with the world, I might make a mistake and do something inadvertently to harm someone. I want to be experimenting. And his autobiography was what? Journey of his experiments with truth. Yes, and truth is, to the word that we are saying, you can call it like the purpose of my existence. Why am I here? What is this world about? How do I fit in? The truth. But I'm going to be in action. So coming to the business world, I find that yes, we must redesign businesses. The present design construct of a business is constraining leaders to comply with, as we said, a very narrow purpose of the business. And this paradigm must pass. It is passing. I talked about the Copernicus moment. Even economists are saying maybe they don't really understand how society functions. And economists' ideas, Friedman and many others' ideas, have been guiding business people because we think of business as an economic enterprise. Now, when we say, but actually, the business is a social enterprise. My goodness, you want me to be a socialist? Yes, I do. Because you have to care for society. You have to care for the environment. You've got to be spiritual in that regard. but I want to be practical. So how do I know? We're talking of authenticity. How do first I know that I am being true to my purpose in a way that I'm not harming the system around me? So I need more measures on my own dashboard. And if I'm going to be a good manager, they better be pretty clear indicators to me about how I am harming or helping the system around me while I am fulfilling my part of the larger system, my purpose in the larger system. How many corporations in their board meetings start with, let's put the whole dashboard up and let's look at which instrument we need to pay more attention to. You start with one instrument always, and you end up at the end by saying, oh, by the way, what have we heard about our CSR program, and so on and so forth. And that's an appendage. It's not connected with your core purpose. If it is your core purpose, as I said, to fulfill your role in the system in a way that it nurtures and helps the rest, then please have the picture of the whole system before you and have indicators on it. Now, this is being required repeatedly to say the businesses must have more balanced scorecards. And there are many movements which are requiring businesses to report against the GRI framework, the Global Compact framework, and there's so many. The shared value frameworks, equatorial principles if you're a financial services and so. But how many businesses actually follow those? And another point, why are there such a plethora of these instruments? Because businesses then choose one which suits them at that time. And
That's
so
very telling.
another one.
That is so telling.
It's so telling. It's so telling. So here in India, we had in 2007-8, before I joined the Planning Commission, a national voluntary guidelines movement run by business leaders, Mahindra, Startas, several others, who said, look, we should voluntarily decide what would be measures by which society should measure us. Of course, we must be adopting them and using them in our own management society. So they came up with metrics which should be adopted by everybody. And they suggested to government, why don't you bless these? You maybe don't want to make it a law, but bless them to say, you say that if businesses do this, then they need to be less regulated because they voluntarily are regulating themselves with respect to their impacts on labor, the environment, corruption, and so on. But look what happened. Some business organizations got together, a whole association, and said, that's very complicated. Why don't we just say that all businesses will put aside 2% of their profit into some CSR? It's so measurable, right? And of course, the politicians loved it because then I can ask you to spend the 2% CSR in my community or in my favorite cause and so on. So everybody was pretty happy. And we back to what you said at the start. CSR became the big thing. Whereas business responsibility, which what the real leaders were saying, it has to be about for which they were going to measure whether they really are being responsible for the condition of the whole system. And they were suggesting that they should be judged by that. They should be judged by this authenticity. People will know that you're authentic, like you're saying, by the experience with us. But you know, the whole world outside can't be having conversations with us. It is going to see us through our performance as it's reported, as it's recorded. So we must, in our performance measures, show our authenticity, that we really do care for these matters. And we are judging ourselves with whether we are doing good on these matters. And we invite you to criticize us, talk to us, and coming back to Milton Friedman, talk to us in your own voices. Yes, and the environmental movement in India says that local communities want to say that you're harming us by putting your project here or doing it in this fashion. So we have an environmental impact assessment process. But what has happened in the last few weeks or months? Business investors have said, you know, this is very complicated, it delays projects. And governments, of course, want projects to get off the ground because then growth will go up. And they say, okay, let's short circuit all this. Let's have a group of experts who will decide whether this business is going to cause a bad impact or not. How can those experts sitting so far away know what is happening on the ground and what the impact would be? We've got to listen to people's voices there. They feel it, they know it. So coming back to, again, listening to different sorts of people around you, and they should know that you're listening to them. They should hear you listening to them by what you say to them. That I'm not anymore telling you the good that I did somewhere else. I want to know what would you like me to do here?
Wonderful, wonderful, beautiful. A lot of things for us to think about. Dilip, I know that you have a lot of questions that have been coming in. Would you like to shoot those questions to Arun and Suresh?
Thank you, sir. Suresh, sir, there was a question from Mr. Varghese from Kottayam. He had sent a comment. What are the important learnings you got while leading Nestle in 2020 when the world faced unprecedented pandemic, especially in rural India or Bharat?
Interesting. Is a good question. Look, I think from a business perspective, yes, I believe that Bharat is very clearly important. It is vibrant, and it is also an essential part of the business fabric of any company. Certainly, a company like mine, which is in consumer goods, it is an important part of the plans that we have as a company for catering to consumers in semi-urban and rural markets. In fact, I think as a result of the lockdown dynamics, where some of the large cities and metros got crippled in their operations because of the lockdown, the tier 2, tier 3 towns somehow managed to keep themselves open and keep themselves afloat much better. And I think it's more reflective of that Bharat is becoming more and more important for all of us. And therefore, I think anything that we do, whether it is in agriculture or whether it is in infrastructure, are going to be important. And there, I do hope that we are able to iron out some of the issues that we are currently facing, which you're aware of. In terms of learnings, I think for me the three biggest learnings are the importance of purpose. I think for us, we went back to what our purpose as a company is, which is really unlocking the power of food to enable healthier outcomes for people today, tomorrow, and for future generations. I mean, that's really what we do as Nestle. I think getting to it, the cultural edifice of who we are as a company, of respect, of empowerment, enablement, of authenticity, of working to a cause that is bigger than you yourself, have been demonstrated, or we have tried to demonstrate as best as we can. So the power of purpose, the power of people, I cannot underscore, Dilip, and the role that my team has played. More than 7,500 people, and many thousand partners, many 100,000 farmers, etc., have played in ensuring that the company stays afloat and is able to serve the consumers. And the third one is something that we celebrate as a company, is a part of partnerships. I mean, the fact is, Nestle's ecosystem is far bigger than the office in Gurgaon or the few other offices and factories that I have nationally. There are millions of people involved in this. And I think for me, the ecosystem of partnerships, be it the 100,000 farmers in Punjab, every drop of milk that they gave us during the pandemic, we have collected and processed. It is a relationship of trust over 6 decades. And I think this is the choice that you make at that point in time. Am I going to say, profitability wise, I don't need all this milk, thank you very much? Or you say, sorry, you take every single drop of milk. Let's take care of what impact it has on your business at a later date. And I think we have stuck to that. Whether it's our distributors, whether it is small and medium suppliers, we have a number of 10-15% of our supplier base are MSMEs. We took it upon ourselves to ensure that the MSMEs were able to operate. They got the permissions. They were given suitable training in social distancing, in hygiene, in different aspects. The simple philosophy that we used, Dilip, was we wanted to be like the banyan tree. And the banyan tree always protects everyone who comes in the shade. And that is my role. That is a role, as we have talked about today, in purpose that goes far beyond profits and returns that I make. I am responsible in some sense to the ecosystem that is helping me to succeed. And I think it is that quid pro quo that we need to look at between what we are and what is the impact that we have. That has been the biggest learning. So the power of people, purpose, and partnerships, along with, of course, the fact that mine is a company of ordinary people who have tried to do extraordinary things. And I think that is the blessing that I have to lead this very fine team.
So wonderful. Very good, sir. Sir, another question to Arun sir. A young girl from New Delhi, Maitreyi, is asking, after your experience with Planning Commission, what is your views on Niti Aayog and whether it is relevant in this current sense, and whether it can shape the future of business thinking to public policy and things like that?
Thank you. Yes, my 5 years in the Planning Commission were the most learningful years for me. It just proved to me also that one can learn even after one is 65 and one thinks one is retired. Because in that situation, in the Planning Commission, sitting in the cockpit of India, without having the pressure of being on the controls, which the Prime Minister and the Cabinet have, and you're sitting also as ministers of state in this parallel body, the Planning Commission, you get access to all of India. People from all over India come and see you, want to tell you what their needs are and their suggestions and so on. And so one could listen to the country. And I met the most wonderful people, because I had been, part of business all the time and consulting to business. Very wonderful people in business for sure. But it's a small part of the whole universe. And there were so many people, even civil servants, wonderful people, good minds with a passion to do something for the country. Of course, NGOs, civil society organizations, and so on. So listening to India on the aspirations of the people of India, listening to their concerns about the paradigm of development that we were following opened me up and put before me a learning agenda for myself to learn more, to learn more. And I was charged by Dr. Manmohan Singh when I joined the Planning Commission, since I was an outsider. I was not an economist and I was not from the government before, but I'd been working on transformations of organizations uh, for my life almost before that, we must think about the transformation of this planning organization, because it has probably served its purpose. It is no longer serving a useful purpose in the progress of our country. So listening to the people, what they felt would be required if we did have a central organization, what would be required? We came to this conclusion that what we needed at the center was an organization which would stimulate learning within the states, so the states could learn to do things better for the sake of the citizens of the states, learning by even people at the district level and so on. And all the learnings that they do must require them to collaborate with others, because no one organization, no one type of organization also, like corporations by themselves, cannot help this large system to improve. So systems of collaboration and of sharing learning across the country are required. And the role of the new Planning Commission, we said, should be to be a catalyst of learning and change, enabling others to find what their purpose is and to be better at fulfilling that purpose while being mindful of the connections that they have with other parts of the system, stakeholders with each other, states with each other, and so on. So if you read the charter of the Niti Aayog, it's a beautiful charter of just a few pages in the 1st of January 2015. It says this, that the Planning Commission has outlived its purpose. It was too central, too controlling, too expert. The people of India weren't participating in the planning and development, whereas we need a catalyst which will enable the people of India, yeah,
Okay.
to lead the planning and the development and to be then implementing, their own ideas in their own places. So that is what the charter of the Niti Aayog says. Now, is the Niti Aayog doing it? Not completely. It takes a while for ideas to change. It takes a while for people to get out of their mental models and their ruts, and to, especially successful people, they don't find it easy to let go of what has made them successful so far. And here you're saying, let go of it and learn something new. But I do feel in my last few encounters in the last few months with officers inside the Niti Aayog, that they are doing this new thing. It's not very visible all around, but those seeds are there and they are growing. That, encourage district level improvements, encourage the SDGs to be implemented not centrally, but in the districts. And then the state should stimulate the districts to implement the SDGs. And then the state will be able to be higher up on the SDG rankings and India will become higher up. So bottom up. This is Gandhiji's idea. Yes. I'm finding that, what was in our constitution, that the villages must develop, the districts must develop, the people must develop. It is in the charter of the Niti Aayog, but we don't know how to do it. Even in corporations, the top guy is supposed to have all the answers. Yes. No, I don't have the answers. And this is what I learned. And I hope that all of us in our leadership positions, wherever we are, would be facilitators of change, enabling others to be leaders in their spheres. And then the whole system is going to be a much better system for everybody.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the answer. Sir, one more question, last question from Vinod Naidu from Hyderabad. Perhaps Suresh sir could answer that, whether having a higher purpose is only meant for big corporates. How relevant is it for MSMEs?
Look, I think, as they say there's a saying in English that says, from acorn grows mighty oaks. So every oak tree today was an acorn at some point in time. So the question of being big or small is only a question of time scale, effort, and outcome. I believe that all successful organizations, whether they have 2 people or whether they have 200,000 people, have been born to a cause. And typically, it is not a purpose statement that is written, but it's something that an entrepreneur does in order to merit the start of an enterprise. In the case of Nestle, for example, Henri Nestle, our founder in 1865, he was a trained pharmacist, but a failed entrepreneur. But he was a man with a good heart. So he saved the life of a child in the neighborhood in poor Switzerland then. Switzerland was then a poor country. By putting together wheat flour, milk, vitamins, and various other things together. And that was led to a business being started, because the people in the village said, you can't sustain your business by just giving free product to people, so you better start doing something. And that's how the product, which still exists, called Cerelac, first started. So it started with a person's goodness of heart to try and do something for society. And little did Henri Nestle realize that what he started would go on to become the largest consumer goods company on the planet. I don't think he ever lived to see it, but it started small. In the same way, whatever my young friend is thinking of, if he starts a business, but he starts a business with a core purpose, whatever it is, to help, to support, to provide, or whatever he uses, I think if that is done well, good luck and God bless that business to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, provided he faithfully does what he set out to do. And I think that is the most important.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilip. I will attempt to summarize this very, very substantive and in-depth discussion that we have been having for over an hour. We have traversed a huge distance and scaled very lofty peaks of higher purpose, principles, ethics, and values. And we have learned so much, from ideals to hard-hitting operational requirements. And Sri Arun Mehra and Sri Suresh Narayanan have given us such a fantastic path through the darkness. Suresh referred to Kabir, and I think he has imbibed from Kabir and lit the Deepak of clarity, not only to this discussion, but to everybody who has been fortunate enough to see and hear this. The Deepak of being true to who you are. And that is something which we will carry with us for a long time. I was absolutely overwhelmed, overawed by the scholastic erudition of Arun, who made us think in so many different ways. He brought out very beautifully the difference between maximization and why Milton Friedman's argument of maximizing profit was flawed, and took us on the path to understand systems thinking, which by definition helps us optimize. And within that whole concept of optimization lies eternal organizational truths like collaboration, humility, listening, to which he alluded many times during this discussion. The importance of understanding what the other person is meaning and not just saying, and incorporating the concerns of others in your intellectual pursuits to deliver a greater good. Arun talked about why it is very, very critical for organizations to expand beyond the profit and understand that if the organization gains, so too must its ecosystem gain, without which sustainability can never be guaranteed. And I think Arun's whole focus must be listened to with great interest by the management education fraternity about the need to incorporate systems thinking into their curriculum and helping generate a whole new generation, not just of managers, but leaders who can visualize a whole system and understand how the parts fit together beautifully. Suresh was extremely hard-hitting in his ideas and comments about the need to get away from esoteric and abstract concepts and understand that purpose means helping everybody evolve, and yatha raja tatha praja, about making sure that purpose, culture, and impact are all aligned, about making sure that you stay true to your values, and not just your values, but staying authentic and not speaking in forked tongues, telling it like it is, being true and honest, not just in one interaction, but in every interaction, and building those relationships of trust, which are way beyond a transactional, profit-seeking, rent-seeking kind of interaction, supporting each other through thick and thin, because that is what is going to make sure that the organization not only survives, but thrives in an inherently unstable, uncertain world. So it's been absolutely fabulous. And I would just round off by stressing on the need for authenticity is something which Krishna teaches us in the Bhagavad Gita. Verse 3, chapter 3, verse 21 is a fabulous sloka on leadership. Krishna says, Yad yad acharati shreshtas tad tad evetaro jana sa yat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Very simply put, my translation of that is role models must model the role. Means a person who's in a leadership position has to be authentic, and what he says and does is what the followers and the common man, evetaro jana, sayad pramanam kurute, what he proves in his own speech and behavior is what the rest of the world will follow. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a great privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, thought leaders. I express my gratitude to Mr. Arun Mehra and Mr. Suresh Narayanan for giving us your valuable time and illuminating our minds with deeper insights. We have really been blessed. This was such an inspiring conversation we had. And let me take this opportunity to request your continued patronage and guidance for all the activities of the Center for Higher Purpose in Business. We have just begun. We wanted to spread this philosophy and build the body of knowledge through this kind of interactions, and we would like to propagate and to the business world. So we envisage the center as a global community of thought leaders who believe in the power of purpose and will evolve a body of knowledge through intellectual co-creation. The center will explore and develop a purpose charter based on the Sustainable Development Goals set by the United Nations. Let me also thank Mr. Madhav Mohan profusely for guiding and leading the roundtable in his distinctive style. I thank all of you who are watching this event from various parts of the world. I request you to visit purposeroundtable.com and give us your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dilip. And thank you, Madhav. And thank you very much. Real pleasure, Arun, to have chatted with you. It's a deep honor for me. And thank you, and have a great evening and a great year ahead of you. Thank you.
Well, thank Madhav. I thank Madhav, and I thank Dilip, and I thank them for this wonderful conversation that we've had, which they've set up. And therefore, I have to thank them for bringing me together with you again, Suresh.
Thank you.
Made it such a lovely evening for me too. It made me reflect. And so thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It's very rare that we get an opportunity to discuss things without boundaries, it's so refreshing, and I think it's the need of the hour, really.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.